one of the questions I get asked often is about voter suppression, and exactly what is it? How does it happen? Do people let it happen? If it indeed does happen, is vote by mail the silver bullet that is going to fix voter suppression? So how would you define voter suppression?
Well, let me try it from the definition of what is a keystone of American democracy, which is the full and fair opportunity for every individual who has a right to vote to be able to cast that vote freely and fairly and without any sort of coercion. And we, as members of a democratic society, in turn, are entitled to a full and fair counting of each of those votes. What has happened, dating back to the founding fathers, is that there have been various encumbrances on that right. From early on, station in life, gender, race, ethnicity, and battling through that, the country has developed numerous sort of battle scars, but has progressed at nearly every turn. But what has remained is a sort of a residue or a roadmap on how to limit the voting rights of certain populations, and it has taken various forms. 70 to 100 years ago, there were all sorts of efforts, whether it was all white primaries or literacy tests or poll taxes. The country battled through that. We are now into an era of several decades of much more sophisticated efforts to suppress voting rights. And that has come in the form of, just to take a recent example, in some states where significant efforts have been made to restore the right to vote to individuals who have served criminal sentences and been released. Some states have tacked on additional requirements that have encumbered those rights. In at least one state, the legislature changed some rules to require that, well, to essentially say that it's nice to restore those rights, but you can't vote until you pay all your court fees and costs, et cetera, with interest. There are all sorts of little limitations like that that are being battled through in the courts. And it is a matter of trying to be patient and watching organizations that are battling through this. One more example is efforts to update voter rolls and trying to, under the guise of legitimately making sure that you have current and consistent voter lists, being overbroad in your efforts to clean up those lists. Some requirements include things like matching signatures, but the signature they use is something off of one of these electronic boxes, which I don't know if you've had this experience, but I'm not sure I've ever had a satisfactory signature experience on one of those electronic boxes. But those kinds of efforts are things that we need to watch very closely. And there are a number of organizations that are busy working on this, either in terms of getting people registered, protecting their right to vote, or challenging in court these efforts that are unfair or pernicious. A couple of them, of course, the Ford Foundation, where I had the privilege of serving on the board, has been a leader for decades on these issues and funding efforts. I'm currently serving on the board of a group that is a nonpartisan group called the Campaign Legal Center. And they are bringing a number of cases to try to make sure that where voter suppression occurs, it's called out.